All right, welcome to the Managing with Mind and Heart podcast. I am your host for today. My name's Ethan Nash, and with me in our remote studio here is a frequent flyer on our podcast that many of you have probably heard before on here, and I have Hana Butler with us today. So, hey, Hana,
Hi, Ethan. Good to be with you.
good to be with you as well. And we're going to talk about a topic that you and I have discussed in this podcast before, and it's a topic that comes up over and over again in all the work that we do with the teams and organizations and individual leaders that we support, and that is a growth mindset. And you would not say this about yourself, Hannah, so I'll say it, but I consider you kind of our in-house expert on a growth mindset and someone within our team that really kind of embraced this and brought it to the forefront for our team to be looking at of like, hey, this is actually a really core piece that we should be including when we're talking about building healthy cultures, building effective workplaces. So I'm excited to talk about this with you more today. And Hana, what have you been thinking about or working on lately in relation to the growth mindset?
Yeah, thanks, Ethan. What a great intro. Yeah, growth mindset. I would just, yeah, you're exactly right on. I would just say it's always mattered, but it matters more than ever. And just in the sense that the world is changing so quickly, to be
Mm.
exact, the rate of change coming from the Neuro Leadership Institute in the last 5 years is at 183%. Don't ask me how they measure that, but I just I know what they're really
Right.
good at numbers. In other words, it's the fastest it's ever been, and it's the slowest it will ever be.
Yeah.
And when I just let that settle in myself, it's heavy and also sometimes can be a little bit liberating in the way that we're not
Mm.
all crazy. The world really is crazy itself, and to be part of it means it's challenging. It's challenging for our
Mhm.
biology. Our brains are not wired to move at that speed. And so our mindset, meaning like the framework in which we approach things as they come to us, matters more than ever. And we know that most humans don't really love change. And therefore, especially you add complexity and all the newness coming at us as leaders.
Mm.
It's why we talk about how much it matters to be aware of your mindset in the certain things that you're doing or the approach to whether it's a problem, AI, an employee, how and where your mindset is directly determines your interactions and I would say how beneficial they are.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Yeah, as you mentioned, I mean, the rate of change is whatever percent. It's a lot to qualitate it, to qualify it. A something I had read this probably 5 years ago at this point was that at the time, they would say that they've measured that a skill in a workplace, a skill's half-life is about 5 years, meaning that the skill that you would have learned 5 years ago is going to be half as valuable as it is today. Now, I would imagine the half-life of a skill has gone even down further, maybe. And so I think what you're saying here is with all the change going on, it requires a whole lot of adaptability. It requires us to relearn. It requires us to figure out what's working for us, what's not, how we have to change. And with all of that, there is a mindset component to it. Yes, there's change management processes and systems and all of that stuff, but at its foundation to making successful, whether individual or collective changes, is a growth mindset. And so it's now more important than ever coming back to what you mentioned earlier. Am I
Yeah,
following you on that?
that was beautiful. And just to clarify, for those people who haven't, we've talked about this in previous episodes, but for its simplest definition, a growth mindset means that I believe I have the ability to change, and that my mind and my ability to learn skills is not limited to
Mm-hmm.
how I currently am. And a fixed mindset, these terms again were developed by Carol Dweck. in the academic setting many years ago. And she continues to do this work more, even more so now in the organizational context with leadership and also with cultures, right? The collection of everyday habits. So as individuals, we can have our mindsets. Our teams and our organizations will also have mindsets in terms of this means how do we approach things? Is failure an opportunity, or is it something that is really, really scary because it means that it determines my fate? Like if I don't do well on this presentation, it means that I'm not a good employee. That would be a fixed mindset approach. If I have a growth mindset, it means, you know what, this is an opportunity for me to put myself out there and to learn, and whatever feedback comes is an opportunity about how to improve. We have the ability, when we have a growth mindset, we have the ability to separate between ourselves and the thing that we're doing. So,
Mhm.
just to kind of remind us what this thing called growth mindset or fixed mindset actually is, and that we're not set as one or the other as people. We all have areas in our life where we have fixed mindsets,
Mhm.
and we all have areas where we have growth mindsets. We also can probably know some people maybe in our lives who tend to be more one way than the other. And
Mhm.
and the goal here is for us to remember that to be a really effective human, but an effective leader especially, it's imperative more than ever that we have a growth mindset. That ability to be curious, to ask questions, to make mistakes and learn from them. These are going to be the key skills and mindsets that make a really good leader in today's world.
Mhm. Absolutely. I want to kind of zoom in on this one piece you said just a little bit more, but you gave us an example of what a growth mindset might sound like. Let's talk a bit more about that. Like, how would we notice? What are some things we might be thinking or hearing from ourselves or hearing from others that would indicate that somebody's in a growth mindset versus someone's in a fixed mindset?
Yeah. Well, you know that sometimes I do like to bring in my personal examples from parenting because
Great. Yes.
they're rich in nature at this point in my life. But a great example was my youngest kid at 5 was up on the big ski hill last year, and he had just learned how to go down by himself, and he was really excited. And as most kids do when they're learning to go downhill, it's fun, it's fast, and they just tend to go straight without
Mhm.
turning. And as a parent, it's always this part where you know the crash is inevitable, right? We always, if we're going to take risks, there's going to be things, consequences at some point. So he did, he wiped out pretty hard in the middle of the slope and had a good yard sale of his gear. I hiked up to him and he looked up at me with his little teary eyes and he said, Mom, crashing is just what makes us better, right? And it
That
was,
is perfect.
yes, that was a beautiful moment of a growth mindset opportunity, right? To recognize I took a risk, I fell, I crashed, and I'm going to get up and do it, learn from it and do it again.
Hmm.
Now, in our workplace, adult world, right, these things can be similar where being able to, if we have an employee or a peer who has a fixed mindset, how that might also show up is, when I actually was with a person the other day who tried to give a coworker some feedback about how they were tracking some contracts. And this person really showed up with a lot of defensiveness. And then also, instead of engaging in a productive problem solving, kind of collaborative conversation with that open curiosity to say, oh, how can I get better? They actually ended the call and then skip leveled and took the information to that person's boss.
Oh,
So
wow.
a little bit of an extreme example, but in that fixed mindset, right, this person was really feeling the feels, like this inability to separate the feedback from about the contracts versus it was felt like feedback about who they are and how they're performing as an employee.
Yeah. Thank you for that. You also mentioned earlier, just of course, you focused on the leader, right? A manager of a team, a leader of an organization, and how really imperative it is for that person to have a growth mindset in order to build an effective team. Why start there? And maybe this is going to sound obvious to some people, but I
Hmm.
think it's worth double clicking on. Like, what is the power of a leader having a growth mindset? Or take the equal opposite. What are the results when a leader has more of a fixed mindset? With, of course, to your note earlier, none of this is binary, right?
Yeah, right.
We all have fixed mindsets and growth mindsets in other areas, but you could also look at it as a continuum. Like, am I more to the side of a growth mindset or more to the side of a fixed mindset? So, anyways, I'm babbling on a little bit, but I hope you remember my original question there.
Right, yeah. So, for if we have any kind of power, we're going to use the word power carefully here, but we're talking about the ability to influence. It's an
Hmm.
influence partnership or process, right? It's also this ability to, we have people's potential in our own hands.
Hmm.
And I believe that a really good leader is the one who can has the courage to see that potential and then put action towards it, right? To helping other people be better. We've got to remember that with power comes great responsibilities, right? To
Hmm. The
from
Great
all,
Lake Uncle Ben. Yeah.
yeah, our favorite movies, and that we are additive to the room.
Uh-huh.
In other words, we are setting the tone, we are creating the vibe, we are creating this thing called culture, which is again the collection of our everyday habits simply by how we show up, how we engage, how we ask questions or make statements. Do we seek input or do we make executive style decisions? Do we never admit when we're wrong or apologize for things, right? These are all these everyday behaviors that add up to these
Hmm.
categories that we're using. And again, no one's perfect. No one is a set growth mindset person or fixed mind, like you're saying. It does live on a spectrum. But again, we really want, if we have leaders who are engaging as often as they possibly can in that ability to notice when they're in a fixed mindset and shift to a growth mindset, they will automatically and magically influence and create that in others.
Yeah.
And but vice versa, right? If we have a leader who really tends towards this fixed mindset where they're in self-protection all the time and they're there to prove themselves versus to improve themselves, that will become the precedent, that will become the vibe and the culture.
Yeah. And I'll build on that if you will. I mean, so you talked about leaders in a position of power, right? And I mean, I will call it power, and I'll call it power just on its face, right? There's a power differential, and it's not only about, you know, the opportunity you have to create a lot of influence. It's also just simply there is an actual power dynamic as a leader, as a manager. You have some control over somebody else's life in a lot of ways. Their hours, their work opportunities, who they get to work with, a whole bunch of different things. And so when I'm thinking about a growth mindset, right, the ability to recognize I don't know what I don't know, the ability to recognize that I'm not stuck or, again, quote unquote, fixed with where I'm at now. I can improve and get better, and that's a lifelong journey, and that's actually a desirable route to go on. Think about that type of leader. That is the leader, coming back to your point, who is less likely, and notice I said less likely instead of, completely cut it
Mhm.
out, but less
Mhm.
likely to, when someone gives them the hard feedback, to be defensive. When she makes a mistake, to be able to admit that mistake and own that mistake, and think about the vibe that then creates on that team. At some level, you're creating more psychological safety. If I know that people are going to make mistakes because I recognize I make mistakes, and we can all learn and grow from these mistakes and actually use them as a launching pad for improvements.
Mhm.
Then when I see an employee make a mistake, not that it doesn't hurt, not doesn't make me want to pull my hair out, but I'm much more likely to respond in a way that's constructive. I'm much more likely to respond in a way that, as you put it, invites curiosity. Hey, what
Mhm.
happened here? Like, wonder where, what went wrong? What can we learn from this? What's the takeaways from this? What would we do differently next time?
Mhm.
And that's a culture that you create of innovation, of growth.
Yes.
And the last thing I'll say here before I'm done with my monologue is, again, taking the equal opposite of that. A leader that consistently has a fixed mindset. And so, as you put it, they might have more of a mindset of, I need to prove myself, because there's a piece of themselves they're kind of protecting, right? Um, they're going to get more defensive when they get feedback, and so on and so forth. That then creates an environment in which people are going to be less likely to talk about their mistakes, less likely to admit mistakes,
Mhm.
and we're not going to be able to change, grow, and improve at the rate we need to keep up. So, anyways, I'm passionate about this like you are, and that's a bit of a long monologue here. Um, but I also wanted to transition a little bit to um, cultivating this. And I want to start with oneself. So if I'm a leader, which I would like to consider myself one, if we're talking to other leaders on this podcast, and I'm saying, hey, I believe in this stuff. I know I need to develop this mindset for myself. Where would I start? Or what are some things I could do?
Yeah, and we're all everyone's a leader, right? We all have influence in certain areas of our lives, so I would say it's for everyone. And
Hmm.
that yes, cultivating this, remembering it's a thing, it's a practice, and we're going to start at the meta level. And more than ever, there's so much new research coming out that one of the most important skills, especially for anyone in a leadership position, but as humans in today's world, is the ability to have metacognition,
Hmm.
to think about how we're thinking.
Hmm.
And this idea of when we are in the flow of the day, interacting with other people, with AI, with all these things coming at us, we're gotta find these ways to actually hold it out there and look at how am I actually thinking about how I'm thinking? Am I in a fixed mindset or am I in a growth mindset about this? And how do I know the difference? So we actually also want to remind ourselves that we are not top-down systems. We are bottom-up systems, meaning our bodies bring us information into the skull cave full of goo up there, which has our brain that can't see anything, and it relies on the information that we tell it from our senses. So being able to remind ourselves that our bodies are the tools and the sensations that we receive, right, whether something feels safe or not safe, is going to translate into the brain and determine our mindset. So we'll start there, right? Self-awareness means, oh, I just got that email from my boss saying, come see me.
Hmm.
And I'm going to notice, okay, pause. What did I feel? I felt the punch to the gut and my heart rate started increasing and I feel the anxiety and now thinking that I'm feeling nervous and I'm worried. Am I in a fixed mindset or growth mindset? Well, probably going to start going down the fixed mindset path where, okay, what did I do wrong? How am I messing up? We want to check it before we wreck it and say, all right, pause. I just don't know about this thing yet. And that would be the shift to a growth mindset. So anytime we can push a little pause button to recognize what we're sensing as probably some stress or fear, and then we can add the word yet. So we're going to deem that habit, right? The meta habit is just to notice and shift. Notice and shift.
Hmm. Okay, so we have notice and shift, which is again like literally thinking about the thoughts that are going on in your head. It's almost
Yeah.
like taking a step back and
Hmm.
observing them as if they're kind of words and images moving across a movie screen.
Yes,
And I'll admit that's easier said than done. And I
totally.
think, when I've been working on this myself or worked with other leaders, part of it is just building in, I think, kind of a built-in gap before you react, and having a simple tool to do that. And I like the concept of bringing to the table here. The Center for Creative Leadership, they talk about this concept called just the line. And I've probably shared it with you
Hmm.
before, but it's super simple, but it's a check-in tool. So paint the scenario. I mean, imagine you're going into a meeting with your team and you've just missed your sales quota for the third quarter in a row. All right.
Hmm.
The fixed mindset voice in your head might be something along the lines of, we're never going to get there. This isn't the team to do it. Or I'm just not the person to lead a sales, right? These are very kind of, fixed mindset sayings, if you will.
Yes.
Right. But the line is, again, just taking 30 seconds before that meeting and visualizing a straight line. And the visual actually helps me, but
Hmm.
you're asking yourself, hey, am I above the line or below the line right now? Now, below the line is characterized by um, the primary goal to be right in this conversation you go into. It's about self-protection.
Yeah.
And above the line is characterized by the primary goal to learn, and is characterized by curiosity. And just that stop right there, asking yourself, where am I at right there, gives you that small gap to then make the shift. All right, I'm trying to shift back into the curiosity mode in this
Yeah.
conversation. I'm shifting more into the mode of what might be possible for us. What can we do to improve? What questions do I need to ask here to help all of our team kind of think through possibilities and things of that nature? So you have metacognition.
Metacognition. And yeah, that's a great tool. Actually, Brene Brown, that's one of the key tools that they use within their own organization and what she really teaches in her Dare to Lead practices. They go a little extra with some extra depth there in
Mhm.
identifying the characters above that live above and below the line. And I
Yeah.
that can be a little helpful to when we go below the line, we tend to go either to the hero, the villain, or the victim, right? Like,
Hmm.
oh, the sales pitch. I am the one who can do it all. They
Yeah.
can't. Because this is
Yeah.
another thing that happens with the fixed mindset. In self-protection, we may utilize putting others down as a way to boost our own sense of status. So that kind of is a little bit of that hero. The villain, right? Well, I guess we need to fire everybody else. This is not the team to do it.
Hmm.
And then that victim, well, why can't anyone understand how hard this is on me? Like that blah. And whereas what you're talking about above the line, we can get creative. The creator comes in. I wonder how we can solve this. The challenger that says, gosh, I wonder, there must be a different way. And the coach, tell me all the ways that you others have learned, right? This idea of kind of the different characters that live above and below the line and noticing which
Hmm.
voices tend to be our favorites.
That's great. I like that. I like that. Yeah, that's some deeper work, deeper reflection that Brene
Yeah,
Brown is so great at. The reason why I like the line is like my coaching clients will tell you that like it's drilled into their head of just like it's a quick, again, it can be a 10-second check-in. What's
right.
drilled in
It's
their head
so
is where the line, the line. Where am I at right now on the line?
yes, I love, yeah, true. Keep it simple. But that could transition into the next habit, which I find really helpful to think about is how do we encourage experimentation?
Hmm.
So when we're below the line, there's no experimenting. Our brain is in the limbic center of the brain. It's in fear, it's in self-preservation. No innovation, creativity, none of that it doesn't live there. So we got to go above the line to be creative. And one of the tools that I love is as a way to encourage experimentation is to consider inviting in part of your team week or weekly meetings or monthly meetings is to have a challenge, mistake of the week or a mistake of the month.
Hmm.
Ethan, where did you mess up this week? Especially,
I mean, it's only Monday, but I can give you like four
yeah,
or five areas.
exactly, right? But if, as a leader, especially I start that conversation, it sends a message to other people that failure is not, or mistakes are not something that we're going to be afraid of or we're going to withhold here. Let's bring them forward and then add that question, what can we learn?
Hmm.
And so it encourages experimentation. We bring things forward rather than holding them under the surface, right? Keeping it
Hmm.
below the line.
So this is encourage courage to try new things is the
Yeah.
takeaway.
Encourage experimentation. It could be one of the ways.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Yeah, and I think a mindset and a skill to develop goes hand in hand with that is curiosity as well, which we've alluded to, several
Absolutely.
times. I mean, the courage to try a new thing is a great first step, and the curiosity is how you're going to figure out how to get there, right? Being curious enough to know, to ask, what have we not tried, right? Or what is
Mhm.
something totally out in left field that could be interesting here? Or why are we responding the way we are? And yeah, I see courage and curiosity kind of going hand in hand in this case of figuring out kind of
Yeah,
more of a forward-looking mindset with.
right. And actually, something you're doing not in this situation is what we want to listen for. Let's say, not only for ourselves, because language, again, is a powerful indicator of where our mindsets are,
Mhm.
because our brain is up there doing its thing. And what comes out of our mouth is a reflection of where our mindset is. and our behaviors, of course, but language really matters. So, thinking of ourselves as coaches, as leaders here, we're also listening for what those around us are saying. And if someone is using a lot of close-ended questions, for example, with that, that should we do this? Should we do that? Is that right? Is it this? Is it that? The close-ended questions can often
Mm,
be a reflection that someone's in a fixed mindset. Whereas all of the questions you were just asking,
mm,
if you notice, they were open-ended questions.
mm,
They start with a what or a how or a why. So as a manager, as a leader, one of the things I can be listening for myself or others is what's the language that they're using right now and how might I help them get above the line or shift their mindset by simply
mm,
pointing out, "Hey, I notice that you're asking a lot of close-ended questions right now. How might we turn those into open-ended questions?"
mhm.
It's the same thing with when I notice people, whether I'm coaching them as clients or in the workplace, when we get a lot of the have tos. Oh, I guess I have to finish that report, that
Mm,
versus, this is challenging and I get to engage with it, a process to learn from it, right? What can I learn
yeah.
here versus, oh, it's just this obnoxious thing that I love.
Well,
Yeah.
I think that's it, right? The what can I learn there?
Yeah.
Just the positive spin on it. Like even I roll my eyes at that, but that's not what you're saying here. You're saying like when I need to sit down today, which is a real thing, and write three different proposals that are similar to proposals that I've written 100 times before. Yeah, there is a little bit of a I have to do this today. The
Hmm.
shift that in hindsight I could have taken there is what opportunity does this present me to sharpen the saw in some area, to get better at something, right? Like every opportunity, even the stuff that we're not saying that you have to like doing these things, but when we can look at each opportunity as an opportunity to improve something, even in small ways, right?
Right.
That puts you more in the creative mindset, I would think.
Yeah, and if that's still a struggle, because for some of us to sit down and write proposals, it's also that we can ask another question. It's what's the why, right? Like try to get to the values underneath there. Why
Mm,
are we really doing this? Whether writing for your example, getting to write proposals and scopes of works, it means that we're reaching out to more clients and getting a chance to improve other people's lives, right? Like we go back to the mission. So
hmm
I think this can also be a way for, again, we're talking about ourselves, but remember, as managers and leaders, we are people of influence. We have power. So we're
mm,
also there to coach. And no one can learn if they're in a fixed mindset. No significant learning happens when we are in a fixed mindset. So
hmm
it is part of our job to not only have and cultivate a growth mindset ourselves, but it is also part of our job to cultivate that in others.
Yeah.
And it behooves us greatly to do so because
hmm
we are going to get the best out of our people if they are operating from a growth mindset the majority of the time. Or we can impart the skills for them to notice and recognize a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. Then, therefore, they can switch themselves.
Yeah. Do you mind if I share something I've been reflecting on a little bit lately in regards to this?
Hmm.
And maybe it's a dead end, or maybe you go somewhere with it. But I'm coming back to again these concepts we're circling around of curiosity and learning. Um, my initial intuition with developing a growth mindset or coaching others to have a growth mindset was more about, hey, there's a failure, there's a setback. How can I use this as an opportunity to help someone get into a growth mindset? But what I've been thinking about more recently is there are an equal amount of opportunities to help people develop a growth mindset through the successes they've had as well.
Hmm.
I know in our workshops we talk about giving recognition, and I think there's a cool opportunity when you're giving recognition to lean into curiosity, right? So when we talk about giving recognition, we might think just, hey, good job, nice work. But what if you added curiosity to that? So, you know, somebody does something really cool, totally knocks a project out of the park, you're giving recognition, but then you're also asking questions like, what was your process you used to get to this? Like, is there something that you do here that you do across other domains? You're just like getting curious about the how they got to this.
Mhm.
And what I think the research indicates is by taking that approach, you get people to start verbalizing and bringing to the surface some of the cool things they do that are often hidden to ourselves because
Yeah.
you're asking these curiosity questions that gets them to think about, yeah, here is how I went through that. And when they start to unpack
Right.
the how they went through that, they can see the other areas they can start applying
Mhm.
these skills and mindsets too. Does that make any sense?
Absolutely. And it's actually one of the other key habits identified to cultivate a growth mindset is called valuing the progress.
Mm,
We are very outcome oriented as a species, and it makes sense biologically, right? It's like, I'm hungry, I need to go get food. We often don't give ourselves or others a lot of credit or attribution for the process and those little tiny steps that get us to what we are wanting. Now, especially as leaders, it it's a natural, normal thing to be very outcome oriented, right? I need this thing from you, get it to me. But like you're saying, when you can slow it down and actually get someone to tell you their story, where
hmm
they've been, where are they now, and where are they wanting to go, you are going to be rewiring those networks in the brain that become more oriented towards learning, right? Curiosity becomes uh, instead of judgment or the fear of doing something wrong, I can shift more into being curious or how can I do it better? We're
hmm
going to be cultivating the desire for innovation versus just doing what was expected because and only staying within that realm. So I think what you're really talking about is so key. And again, it touches on so much in our brain, our biology, to give someone a reward in that status network to say it's not that you're just enough, right? It's not that you are just included in the fire circle, that you did the thing, but I'm asking you how you did it. And I'm the
hmm
leader of the tribe, or I'm the bot. It lights up everything like a Christmas tree in people's brains in terms, and lets go of all those good neurochemicals associated with reward and pleasure, which then says, I'm going to do that again.
hmm hmm
So I
Yeah.
think it's a huge
And
one.
what I also think it's that and it's beyond that. It's yes, the status thing with the power differential and all that stuff, but the curiosity when they've succeeded is also coming back to metacognition. This is coaching. By asking questions, you're inviting them to think about how they were thinking
Mhm.
when they accomplished this. I
Exactly.
think
Yeah.
that's the cool part. So that said, where does the role of kind of feedback come into play with all of this? I mean, I think we would agree that, feedback is a key component of being an effective team and probably an effective human being, but can you speak more to that in relation to the growth mindset?
Yeah, the dreaded F word, right? So
Right.
we're going to remember that when someone gives us feedback, whether it's packaged in a nice way or a not so nice way, it triggers our self-defense. So everyone goes to that kind of initial fixed mindset, closed off place. And it's how quickly we can recover that. Like you said earlier, it's that, oh, just went below the line. I'm going to recognize it. I'm going to acknowledge it and get above the line. And one of the ways we can do that, right, is to remember that another key habit of the growth mindset is that we involve others in our learning. And we don't know what we don't know. We are the least accurate about ourselves versus others who see us and experience the impact of our behaviors. So feedback is a requirement, right? Not a what if. And one of the things that we know in the brain is to reduce defensiveness by 50% in both the receiver of feedback and the giver of feedback, because we have also got to know giving feedback is hard. We can do that by going to ask for feedback versus waiting for it to come. So instead of me waiting for you to give me feedback about today's podcast or whatever, at the end of the conversation, if I ask you, hey, Ethan, how could I have done better on that? It reduces both of our defensiveness by 50% and it turns our brains again from judgment into curiosity, and we can be above the line together. So that's another cool aspect and another habit we can practice.
Yeah. So inviting people to kind of share your journey with you, your growth journey with you, inviting them into the process. I like that. And yeah, on your note of, we don't know what we don't know. I was just reading a Harvard Business Review article the other day, and there was this pretty large study, and they found that basically 87% of middle managers and 90% of executives put themselves within the top 10% performers in the company. So, like statistically, that's impossible. And I'm bringing that up because it's a nod to the idea that once we believe we want a growth mindset and believe that's something we want to cultivate and we understand the power of it, a huge component of this is just committing to that journey of knowing thyself,
Mhm.
right? And you can do some pretty good work with some self-reflection, but we all have blind spots. Like other people see us often more clearly than we see ourselves in some areas. And so, especially as a leader, as a manager, it is inviting feedback with those open-ended questions, like you asked it so great right here, of like, what is, however you asked it, it was an open-ended question. Anyways, the point being inviting feedback, leaning into the scariness of it, which is the internal conversation I've had to have myself with myself. It's being courageous to ask for the feedback that might be hard to hear. And as a leader, that also then creates the environment where other people feel more safe to also ask for feedback for themselves. And now you have a whole thing going in the culture. Can you summarize where we've come so far in this conversation?
Yeah, so we're going to remember that mindsets really matter. How we approach interactions, problems, things like that determine the results much more than the problems themselves.
Hmm.
And cultivating, again, mindset is a practice, it's a choice, and we can have certain domains that we can show up as fixed or growth, but we do want to try to lean towards being more so on this growth mindset journey. And how do we do that? Well, the metacognition, right? This ability to think about how we're thinking and to notice when we feel and recognize a fixed mindset to shift to a growth mindset. I would say if I could get people to just do that thing, that would be amazing. Notice and shift.
Hmm.
Other three habits we talked about are to encourage experimentation, right? Just to remember that by sharing our mistakes, using that question, what can I learn here? It helps shift our brain from judgment and the fear into curiosity and learning. We can also invite others on our journey with us. So going and asking for feedback can be a huge way to improve those gaps that we have. And then of course remember to celebrate, celebrate, celebrate. This work it's hard. It's it's hard. So value your own progress and value the progress of others. They're not the big things, it's the little things that people do, right? It's my little guy picking himself up off the slope and saying he's willing to do it again by himself, or it's that coworker that's able to take the hard feedback about the contracts and say, you know what? Yeah, you're right. I didn't do that quite right. Let me fix it. These are the huge wins that we want to celebrate and take the time to acknowledge in ourselves and others. So we keep
Yeah.
doing them. That's the whole point.
I love that. And as a leader looking to cultivate an environment of a growth mindset, a culture of a growth mindset, don't forget to notice and reward the instances where you see someone exercising a growth mindset. I mean, if there's, for me anyways, like if there's one thing I'm going to try to remember, it's like when I see someone have a setback, go through a failure with a project, and then decide I'm gonna try this again. Like
Yes.
that's an opportunity to thank them, like genuinely thank them and call it out. Right? When someone um receives feedback, well, ask for feedback, right? Acknowledge it. The things that we call out as a leader and acknowledge are the things that are probably going to stick,
Yes.
whether you want to believe that or not.
Yes. And it's one thing for an individual to cultivate a growth mindset, but if we're living in or working within an environment that does not, it's like saying, Ethan, good job having a growth mindset, but you're behind bars. You're in a cage.
Hmm.
Keep growing, right? And so it is important that it's not only an individual effort, but we do take this on as a leader to think about how we're cultivating this within our team and our greater organization, because it matters.
Absolutely. Hana Butler, everybody. Hana, thanks for coming on the show, talking about growth mindset. I will encourage people to go back and listen to the other episodes we've recorded with Hana on a growth mindset. We'll link to those in the show note. But Hana, anything you want to leave the audience with besides what you've already mentioned?
Keep growing.
Keep growing. There you have it. All right. Thanks, everybody.